समुद्रस्य हिमाद्रश्चैव दक्षिणं वर्षं तद् भारतं नाम भारतीय त्रिसन्तति।
Welcome to today's episode. Today's episode is about a person, an individual whose name all of us are familiar with. Bhajo Govindam, Govindam bhaja moodamate. Tumeka bhavani. Mano buddhi ahankara chittani nahan. हम सभी परिचित हैं with these kinds of stotrams, and these stotrams were composed by Adi Shankaracharya. Adi Shankaracharya left his footprint everywhere in Bharatvarsha. We are familiar with the name, we are familiar with his stotrams, we are familiar sometimes even with Shankar Bhashya, his Bhashya on the Bhagavad Gita, but sometimes we do not know enough about Adi Shankaracharya.
Na manu, na buddhi, na chitta ahankar, na jivya nayan nasika karna dwar, न चलता न रुकता न कहता न सुनता, जगत चेतना हूँ अनादि अनंता।
जगत चेतना हूँ अनादि अनंता। जी हाँ, इन 5 शब्दों में हमारे पूरे अस्तित्व का सार है। उन सब सवालों का जवाब है जिनकी तलाश हमें जन्म से लेकर ताउम्र रहती है। मैं कौन हूँ, मैं कहाँ से आया हूँ और मृत्यु के बाद मुझे कहाँ जाना है। आत्मा क्या है, परमात्मा क्या है और इन दोनों में आखिर संबंध क्या है।
न मन हूँ, न बुद्धि, न चित्त अहंकार, न जिह्वा नयन नासिका कर्ण द्वार, न चलता न रुकता न कहता न सुनता, जगत चेतना हूँ अनादि अनंता। जी हाँ, ओंकारेश्वर ममलेश्वर ज्योतिर्लिंग यह वही स्थान है जहाँ केरल के कलाड़ी गांव से निकले 8 साल के शंकर की गुरु की तलाश पूरी हुई और यहाँ गुफा में समाधि में लीन, ध्यान में लीन गुरु गोविंद पाद स्वामी से उनका परिचय हुआ और उन्होंने इन्हीं शब्दों में संस्कृत में अपना परिचय दिया।
भारतीय इतिहास के सबसे महान विद्वान और भारतीय सांस्कृतिक एकता के प्रतीक आदि शंकराचार्य ने बचपन में दिए अपने परिचय को बाद में सूत्र के रूप में परिभाषित किया। ब्रह्म सत्यम जगन मिथ्या जीवो ब्रह्मैव नापरः, यानी ब्रह्म ही सत्य है जबकि जगत के सभी नाम रूप मिथ्या अथवा नाशवान हैं और मनुष्य की आत्मा और ब्रह्म मूल में एक ही है, दो नहीं। भारतीय दर्शन जगत के सबसे प्रमुख स्तंभों में से एक आदि शंकराचार्य ने ही हिंदू धर्म को उस दौर में दोबारा स्थापित और प्रतिष्ठित किया जब ज्ञान की इस भूमि भारतवर्ष को अज्ञानता रूपी अंधकार ने घेर रखा था। निराकार ब्रह्म और मिथ्या जगत की बात करते हुए भी शंकराचार्य 12 ज्योतिर्लिंगों, 18 शक्तिपीठों और 4 विष्णुधामों की ऐसी तीर्थ यात्रा पर निकले जो मिलकर भारत को एक करने का काम करती थी। एक ऐसा भारत जो तमाम विविधताओं से भरा था। सन्यासी के तौर पर केरल के कलाडी से शुरू हुई आदि शंकराचार्य की दिग्विजय यात्रा में ओंकारेश्वर, काशी, महिषी, बद्रीनाथ, शारदा पीठ, श्रृंगेरी, कांची, पुरी और द्वारका समेत देश भर में अनेक पड़ाव आए। इस तरह उन्होंने केरल से कश्मीर, पुरी से द्वारका, श्रृंगेरी से बद्रीनाथ और कांची से काशी तक पूरे देश की यात्रा की। जिस तरह ब्रह्मा के 4 मुख हैं और उनके हर मुख से एक वेद की उत्पत्ति हुई है। इसी आधार पर आदि शंकराचार्य ने 4 वेदों और उनसे निकले अन्य शास्त्रों को सुरक्षित रखने के लिए भारत में 4 दिशाओं में 4 मठ यानी पीठों की स्थापना की। इनमें उत्तर में ज्योतिर्मठ, पश्चिम में द्वारका मठ, दक्षिण में श्रृंगेरी मठ और पूर्व में गोवर्धन मठ। और शंकराचार्य पद की स्थापना करके उन पर अपने 4 प्रमुख शिष्यों को आसीन किया। ये वही 4 शिष्य हैं जिन्हें हम आदि शंकराचार्य के साथ सन्यासियों का वस्त्र पहने देखते हैं। ये सुरेश्वर, तोतक, हस्तमलका और पद्मपाद हैं। आदि शंकराचार्य के समय से आरंभ हुई शंकराचार्य पद की ये परंपरा निरंतर चली आ रही है। अंतिम सत्य की हिंदू धर्म की अथक खोज में योगदान देने वालों में जगतगुरु आदि शंकराचार्य निसंदेह महानतम विद्वानों में से एक थे। उनका 32 वर्षों का छोटा सा जीवन उतना ही अद्भुत है जितना वो अद्वैत दर्शन जिसे उन्होंने कुशलता से गढ़ा है।
To rediscover Adi Shankaracharya, to learn about Adi Shankaracharya, today we have a wonderful, wonderful guest. The guest's name is Pawan Verma, who authored this phenomenal book on Adi Shankaracharya. This is the English version. Hindi में भी अनुवाद हो चुका है. I recommend that all of you should read this book. However, right now it is my privilege and honor to welcome Pawan Verma ji. Pawan Verma ji, welcome, swagat.
Thank you.
He does not really need an introduction. Career diplomat, civil servant, politician, political commentator, prolific author of many books. But today, welcome, we are here to talk about Adi Shankaracharya. Let me ask the first question that occurs to me. Why Adi Shankaracharya? Of course, you have been interested in Hinduism, but you have also written on Tulsidas and Ramcharitmanas. What attracted you to Adi Shankaracharya?
I think Adi Shankaracharya was, as the subtitle of this book says, Hinduism's greatest thinker. When I say that, I am not devaluing the other great minds that have contributed to the evolution of Hinduism specifically and ideation generally. But Shankaracharya, for the sheer rigor of his intellect, for the unwavering ability to concentrate on the subject, and for the fascinating life that he had, plays a pivotal role in the evolution of Hinduism and the crystallization of its thought processes. So I have written a book, for instance, on Mirza Ghalib. That
Yes.
was my first book.
Yes.
I have written a book on Krishna. Among all my books, I have written a book on Chanakya, on Tulsidas, but this book was also in the nature of a personal journey. To discover this mind, because one of my great regrets is that many of us, including many in your audiences, have heard of Adi Shankaracharya, but don't know enough about his life, when he lived, where he was born, where did he take Samadhi, what was his achievements in the secular realm, what were his writings relating to philosophy and metaphysics. So I set out on this voyage of discovery, and you will be surprised to know, I actually traced his footsteps, because as you know, he was born in the deep south. उनका जन्म कलाडी में हुआ, केरला में, और उन्होंने समाधि ली केदारनाथ में in the 8th century, 788 to 820 are his life. So बड़ी ही अल्प आयु में 32 साल की उम्र में उन्होंने समाधि ले ली। अब 32 साल की उम्र में उन्होंने क्या किया, जो उनकी उपलब्धियां हैं, वो एक अलग अपने आप में कार्य है और उनकी सोच एक अलग अध्ययन का विषय है. Born in Kaladi, I went to Kaladi and I travelled with Adi Shankaracharya metaphorically from there to the banks of the Narmada to Omkareshwar, where he went as a child of 7 or 8 to join the hermitage of his first guru. And he stayed for 3 years in Omkareshwar. Then he went to Kashi. And of course he went to Badrinath and Kedarnath. And in that 32 years of his short life, Vivek, he set up 4 mutts. So I think it was an amazing life that attracted me, and of course the sheer fountainhead of his intellectual depth.
Let's not spend too much time on this, but for the benefit of the viewer, answer one question that we don't really know for sure when Adi Shankaracharya was born and when he died. You mentioned a date, 2 dates, which are the acceptable dates. But quickly, can you address the question of why you opt for these dates as opposed to other dates?
Well, you know, if you go to some of the mutts in Puri, in Dwarika, there is a belief that he was born sometime in 3000 BCE. And I don't want to get into a quibble on history. On the basis of several authorities, including Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, and judging his commentary on some others, including Buddhist scholars, and what followed him subsequently in the form of Ramanuja, who came with Vishisht Advait, and empirical evidence on the ground such as Kaladi, where his house where he was born has been preserved, I came to the conclusion that these perhaps are the most likely dates, but I do not say that as a fiat, because I believe that for individuals of such iconic stature, there can be more than one view as to when they lived, and historical evidence is always sketchy. They record ideas, and ideas evolve over a period of time, but the lives of individuals. For instance, I went to Kashi. That is where Adi Shankaracharya had some of his great debates, because his preferred instrumentality and modality for propounding his point of view was Shastrarth, civilized discourse, discussion. And on the banks of the Ganga in Kashi where he lived, this young scholar had a Shastrarth with a variety of scholars, because as you know, you are a scholar yourself, there was not one school of Hindu philosophy. There was the Nyaya, the Vaisheshik, the Sankhya Yoga, there was the Karmakant school of Purva Mimamsa, and then Uttar Mimamsa or Vedanta. So there were many opinions and many sects, Vaishnav, Shaiv, Shakt, Ganapatya. So there were many schools of thought, and he sat in Shastrarth there. But no one can pinpoint where Adi Shankaracharya lived in Kashi Vishwanath. So that was one part of my research, to try to piece together evidence to try and find out. So I accept the ambivalence on his date. It is my preferred choice of dates.
Will you quickly tell the viewers about the anecdote connected with his possible death and the story about the crocodile and his mother? Will you quickly?
Well, he was a very small child and he was keen on sannyas. Now, you are talking of precocity here, a very precocious child, and the only child of a widowed mother. And this is Kerala in the 8th century. And she was naturally extremely reluctant to let this only child of hers adopt sannyas. And the Purna river flowed along Kaladi, and once it is said, and there is a crocodile ghat in Kaladi. So when I went there, I was surprised to find there is a crocodile ghat. That it is said that he with his mother was swimming in the river or were in the river and a crocodile caught his leg. And he shouted out for help, and his mother tried to help, and he said that I will not come until you agree to my request to let me become a sannyasin. And his mother, in that moment of crisis, agreed to the request.
I have always thought that Adi Shankaracharya was a phenomenal teacher. What I mean by that is a phenomenal teacher is someone who can compose a text or convey his instructions at different levels depending on the receptivity of the student. So, at the elementary level, you have the stotrams. At a slightly more advanced level, you have Vivek Chudamani.
The prakaras.
And if you are really advanced,
The
there's the Bhashya. Do you have a favorite stotram?
Well, you know, the Nirvan Shatakam is very popular. We all recite it every day, millions listen to it. But for me, long ago in college, when I heard it first time, it gives you a sense of transcendence.
Nirvan Shatakam.
Yeah, a sense of liberation. When he says, na mai raga dvesha, na mai moha lobha, mado naiva mai naiva matra bhava, na dharmo na chartho na kamo na moksha, chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. Just simply, I am bliss and awareness, shivoham shivoham. Na mai mrityu shanka, na mai jati bheta, pita naiva mai naiva mata na janma, na bandhur na mitram, gurur naiva shishya, chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. Bliss and awareness, and look at the sense of appropriation. I am Shiva, I am Shiva, Shivoham. In any other religion, this would be called blasphemy. But Hinduism allows it.
For viewers who do not know, the word nirvana means extinguishing. It's almost a synonym for mukti, moksha, being freed from the bondage of samsara. Shatakam, because there are 6 verses. Pawan recited parts from the first.
I just took parts.
At random for the first 5. There are 6 wonderful, wonderful verses. For me, actually, it all builds up to a crescendo, and it is the last verse which really moves me. Ahang nirvikalpa nirakara rupa vibhutvacha sarvatra sarvendriyanam nacha sangatah na muktir nameya chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. And in a sense, it captures everything about Hinduism.
Indeed.
Let's move on to a slightly complicated area, because these expressions the viewer faces but does not know what they mean. At one level, they are very difficult to explain, but nonetheless, who other than Pawan Verma can give it a shot? We have Dvaita Vedanta. Vedanta everyone understands. We have Dvaita, we have Advaita, we have Vishishtadvaita. What is the difference?
Put very simply, Advaita or non-dualism postulated the ultimate and non-negotiable, non-dual supremacy of one cosmos permeating entity called Brahm. Brahm is akhand, indivisible, achintya, beyond thought, Purna. It is Nirvishesh Chinmatram, undifferentiated consciousness. It is Sarva Pratyaya Darshanin. It is supreme intelligence. And it is all pervasive. And it is Nirguna, without attributes. And Shankaracharya builds up a tremendous corpus of scholarship in proving the primacy of Brahm and everything else being a derivation. The problem is, for the purposes of our program, because time is short, I have spoken for hours on this subject, that Brahm supremacy was never challenged. But Brahm as a concept for the normal devotee was much too dry a notion to actually propel the devotee towards bhakti and prapatti, surrender, and that personal communion with a personal God. So what does Ramanuja do, who came little later after Adi Shankaracharya? A brilliant scholar, he says he does not question the primacy of Brahma, but allows for Ishwar, which is Vishisht Advait. Brahm is the ultimate, derived from Brahm is Ishwar. That Ishwar is accessible to a devotee. I can go to him, actually worship him in form, surrender to him or her, and ask occasionally for something from Ishwar, because he is my Ishwar. Similarly, when you come to Nimbarkar, he talked of Shuddha Advait. Dvait Advait, Shuddha Advait was Vallabhacharya who came later, Nimbarkar was Dvait Advait. All of these are attempts to personalize Brahm in the form of some manifestation of a personal God for the devotee, because Brahm as a concept was much too dry, although nobody ever questioned its ultimate supremacy. So we finally lead from Brahm through Ramanujam, Nimbarkar, Vallabhacharya, Chaitanya to a full-blown Vaishnavism of only bhakti, to a personal God.
So, at one level, not that there is a dichotomy between the two, at one level one is talking about Gyan, at another level one is talking about Bhakti, and all of us have all of these in our bodies. It depends on whether the mind and the intelligence is more important or whether it is the heart which is more important. But going back to this, suppose I state it in these simple terms, very simple and simplistic terms, that there is a notion of sweetness, but that is an abstract notion, I can't grasp it. You give me Nimbu Pani that has sugar in it, I have a better appreciation of sweetness because it is there in the Nimbu Pani now. If I see grains of sugar or a lump of sugar, I have an even better understanding of what that sugar is, and it is the same way with the Jivatman and the Paramatman. Tell us a little bit about his debates.
Well, his greatest debate was with Mandan Mishra.
Tell us also about that story about Mandan Mishra's wife.
Oh yeah, very briefly, Adi Shankaracharya believed in the Gyan Marg. Mandan Mishra belonged to the Karma Kand school. So they belong to different schools of thought. Mandan Mishra believed if you perform your karmas in the appropriate manner as prescribed by the Vedas, that is sufficient to achieve moksha. Adi Shankaracharya's was a more penetrating school of thought which believed in the power of knowledge rather than merely ritual or karma. Adi Shankaracharya goes to Mandan Mishra to have a debate, a shastra, a civilized debate which is near extinct today. And the two, even though Mandan Mishra is busy at that time and initially resents the presence of Adi Shankaracharya, sit down for a debate. Who is to be the judge of the debate? Mandan Mishra proposes Ubhay Bharti, his wife, to be a very learned lady in her own right, to be the judge of the debate. And Adi Shankaracharya has no objection. Imagine the trust and the nature of the civilized debate that one person's wife is the referee and the other person has no compunction in accepting it. And so the debate continues, according to some, for weeks, days, weeks, months, and all of Hindu India follows this debate. Follows this debate in the absence of social media and electronic media, by word of mouth. And Adi Shankaracharya wins the debate. And the condition was whoever loses will become the other's follower and join as a disciple. But Ubhay Bharati objects. After Mandan Mishra has lost the debate, she says, as his wife, I am Ardhangini, one half of him. And therefore, now you will have to debate with me before finally we accept defeat. She begins to ask Adi Shankaracharya questions on the Kama Shastra, about which Adi Shankaracharya as a sannyasin has no knowledge. But she says, I wish in the context of this debate to ask questions on sensuality and Kama. So Adi Shankaracharya begs for 30 days of leave of absence to pick up Gyan about the Kama Shastra, about Kama. And the story then goes a little very interesting turn, where according to lore, he reincarnates himself in the body of a dead king, the king of Kamarupa kingdom, who has just passed away. So Adi Shankaracharya incarnates in that body, the king revives, there is much celebration. Adi Shankaracharya in the body of that dead king goes back to the palace, and there among his many wives and perhaps his harem, he learns all about Kama Shastra. And so just in time, the body is again left behind. He leaves the body, goes back to Ubhay Bharati, has a debate, wins in the debate. He must have acquired great knowledge in those 30 days. And she and Mandan Mishra become his disciples. Now this is a story which is obviously allegorical, metaphorical, which is to illustrate the validity of the four Purusharths in the worldview of Hinduism. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Each has a place, not necessarily in the life of a sannyasin, but the idea was to broad base the appeal of Adi Shankaracharya, and not by exclusion but by inclusion. So it served a purpose, and I have tried to explain this in the book, and in my new book, The Great Hindu Civilization, I argue, I speak at great length of the phenomenal concept of the four Purusharths in Hinduism.
Whatever Adi Shankaracharya composed, we should read those also. Brahma Sutra, Bhashyas are not for everyone, but certainly the stotrams.
Bhaja Govindam.
Bhaja Govindam, Punarapi Janamam, Punarapi Maranam. These are things I think all of us should read. धन्यवाद पवन जी. I keep saying पवन जी.
नहीं, आपको
मित्र है तो पवन कहना चाहिए. धन्यवाद पवन. In the next episode, मेरे साथ चलिए मायापुर. हम बातें करेंगे, जानेंगे श्रील प्रभुपाद के बारे में, जानेंगे इस्कॉन के बारे में, जानेंगे चैतन्य महाप्रभु के बारे में, कृष्ण भक्ति के चैतन्य धारा के बारे में. मेरे साथ देखिए इतिहास संसद टीवी पे.